And there's two things I'd like to have in my life that I don't have. One would be a cool accent, and the other would be your mustaches. I'd like to have a cool firefighter mustache, and I'd like to have a cool accent like that man. I can't have the accent because I'm not from a cool part of the country, and I can't have the mustache because I never officially hit puberty. All right, so that's the way it is. PK took me to dinner at Station 5 the other night, and there were some nice Berkeley mustaches in that firehouse. I thought, so there's several guys that I have a man crush on in this part of the fire service right now. So thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for being here. I've already set a timer for about 5 minutes past the hour of 10. We'll press on and we'll do half of the segment this morning and then take a breather. I'm only good for so long. You're only good for so long. We'll come back in and press on till noon. The CAP has got the logistics set up for us to where we can take an hour and a half for lunch. And then we'll come back in the afternoon, do a segment 3 with a break halfway through, and a segment 4, and we'll try and wrap up in the 4:30 range. I wrote my email on the board here, and it's my personal email if you want to copy it down, DMcGrail, denverfd@msn.com. One of the advantages we have in our fire service today is that it's a very small fire service. And what I mean by that is I'll make reference to my father periodically during the class. My dad was on the job. He did 42 years on the Denver Fire Department, and I'm certainly going to try and match his time on the DFD. He worked from 55 to 97, so he worked through some of the most busy years in our fire service. But he told me one time in the late 60s, there was a firefighter from the city of St. Louis came by Station 2 in downtown Denver to visit him. And a firefighter knocked on the door, like a lot of us will visit firehouses when we're somewhere else, especially if we know somebody that works there. But firefighter knocked on the door, they invited him in, they had coffee, kept him for lunch, and had some good conversation, that sort of thing. After lunch, he picked up and went back to his hotel and probably went back to St. Louis, Missouri. Do you think that my dad, Pat McGrail, ever had a conversation with that firefighter after that chance encounter, if you will? And he absolutely did not. That was a one and done type thing, because most of you are probably not from my generation. There may be a couple of guys at the end of the table, including you, Chief, that are closer to my generation. But when I was a kid growing up, there was something called a long distance phone call. And nobody in their right mind would make a long distance phone call because it would cost a whole lot of money to do it. And my dad being a firefighter, and this St. Louis firefighter being a firefighter, because firefighters are kind of tough and macho and that sort of thing, would absolutely not sit down and handwrite a letter to his new buddy and then put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and send it to St. Louis. So that was the end of that relationship and that story. But if you think about it right now, how many firefighter contacts do you have on this computer that you carry around in your pocket? Okay, we've established relationships with firefighters all across the fire service, and it makes it a very tiny fire service. And what my point to all that is that you and I can be twice as good as firefighters, James,
yes,
when we have this conversation and this communication. So I met James yesterday, who is a Berkeley firefighter, and if in the future when I hear of a fire that occurs in Berkeley, I'll be reaching out and saying, James, tell me about that fire. Did you go to it? What went on? What was some of the strengths and weaknesses, some of the good and the bad, that sort of thing. It makes us twice as good as we were before. You can have the so-called vicarious experience by learning from other firefighters around the fire service. So please don't hesitate to use DMcGrail, denverfd@msn.com if I can help you in any way. Maybe if I'm not the right one to answer the question, I might be able within my computer to say, hey, you should call this guy over here because he or she really knows what they're talking about with regard to that component. So it's a small fire service. We have to take advantage of that on a regular basis. So I thank you all for being here very much. The title today is Firefighting Operations in High-Rise and Standpipe Equipped Buildings, and that's the title of the book. And obviously this is just kind of a Reader's Digest format for that. But I want to talk about the big picture strategic stuff to an extent, certainly tactical stuff, and then get down to the meat and potatoes with some task level stuff. This class in our training program today will be best if you participate. Let me know. I don't know why several firefighters from Fresno, or a nice strike team, good-looking strike team from Fresno, made their way over here. But there's two things I'm really happy about, several things I'm happy about. Number one, that you're here. Number two, when I look out onto the avenue here, I see a white Fresno, fire SUV. Now, are all the apparatus white in Fresno? Okay, well, at least that one is, because the fire trucks in Denver are white, and I don't feel so alone at this point. I want red fire trucks. I want there to be the latest NFPA standard. You must paint everything you own red. Okay, yes, let's start in Denver for sure. I'm very, very grateful that you're here. That's a trip, isn't it? How long of a travel trip is that for you guys to come over here? 3 hours? Okay, so you made a sacrifice to come over here, and I very much appreciate that, as I do with everybody in the room. My wish and want and my goal is that when you start the trip back at 4:35 this afternoon, that all three men would be saying, that was worth our time. I got something out of that. As you can imagine, over the course of 42 years, I've been on the receiving end of a lot of mandatory training classes, for better or for worse. And nothing worse than when you and I are walking out of the training building and firefighters are like, well, there's 8 hours of our life we'll never get back. All right, so help me today. I'd like to know why you're here. Love your cap, okay? Would like to know why you're here. Why did you, when you saw this floating around, I think I'm gonna go down there. I'd like to hear what this guy has to say. It will help me when you say, I'm here today because I'd like to know more about this. I certainly have a plan, but as we get going through the plan, I'm happy to take a detour when you say, are you gonna talk about this, or what have you experienced in this area or that area? So talk a little bit about that. During the program, it's important to me to try and learn names, okay? I know Joe, okay, and I know James because they were part of the previous training program over the last couple of days. I want to start to learn names, but before the day's over, I'm gonna call Joe James, okay? And I'm gonna call James Joe. And it's easy for me because at the end here, our second in command in Berkeley is Keith, but I'm just gonna cut to the chase and call him Chief, because I know I can't mess that name up very badly. So let me know who you are and why you're here, and what makes you tick and what you're all about and what's going on in your corner of the fire service. We're being hosted by our brothers and sisters from the Berkeley Fire Department. And thank you very much for supporting this. The hospitality from PK, from Captain El Munoz, it's been over the top. I want to be able to repay everybody at some point in time when you get out to Denver at some point in time. I know we have Fresno firefighters, our strike team that's up in front here. I believe there's Oakland firefighters in the room, okay? My brother, tell me your first name. Seth. Seth, okay, I've met you before, Seth, okay? It's really good to see you again, okay? Oakland firefighters. Now, my goal, and the chief's got to help me with this, I want us all to be one, okay? So call it the Bay Area Fire Authority, whatever you want to call it. But it's big. We're all on the same page. We're all together. We all use the same SCBA. We all have the same radios. We all have the same operating procedures. Everything we own is painted red. And we have at least 2 helicopters, okay? What's that? I have been drinking, and it's definitely a tall order, but that's let a guy dream just a little bit, right? I know that's kind of idealistic, but I want us all to be together and on the same page. I know I saw a patch, there's a San Rafael firefighter here. There's a couple of guys from San Rafael, okay? And I hope I spelled that correctly, okay? Another cool mustache behind the Fresno strike team, okay? So San Rafael is here, El Cerrito is here, and you should have seen how badly I was gonna booger the spelling of that. And the chief was helping me out. He said, common spelling, just help yourself, okay? My brother from Santa Rosa, okay? And you're one and only from Santa Rosa here today? So I got pulled over in Santa Rosa because my wife and daughter and I we wanted to go to Seattle and drive the Pacific Coast all the way to San Diego. And one night in Santa Rosa, we were struggling to find a place to eat, and we weren't all on the same page. And when we finally nailed the place down, in full disclosure, when I rent a car, I get my money's worth out of that car, okay? Most of the time I drive it like I stole it, okay? And we were all hungry, and I was airing it out big time. Woo, woo, oh geez, there it is, okay? But a nice young lady who pulled me over said, Mr. McGrail, any drugs or alcohol today? I said, I know I'm from Colorado, but absolutely not, ma'am. So, but she gave me a break, and I was grateful for that. The crazy part is I was airing it out down just outside of, we were down in Southern California. I can't remember. We were trying to make it to San Bernardino, I think was our stop. But I was airing it out big time, and CHP pulled in behind me. I said, oh, my goose is cooked now, because it was excessive. It was inappropriate what I was doing. And I shouldn't say this in front of the chief, but the last time I renewed my driver's license, I did it on duty in uniform with a remote mic up here. And he picked up on that, and he gave me a break. And it was so, my wife and daughter said, you are such a jackass, you know, but what are you going to do? So got my brother from Santa Rosa. Thank you for making your way down here. Anybody I'm missing? Any firefighters from any other agency that I'm missing right now?
Alameda County?
One more time?
Alameda County.
Alameda County. Okay, and I'd heard there was going to be Alameda County guys here. Do you hear from TJ Welch ever? So on and so forth. Because I just always really admired that guy. Just a real friendly, happy guy, positive guy, and a surfer dude and so forth. And he was a guy from Alameda County that I knew. And so great to have you here for sure. Alameda County is here. And anybody else that I'm missing? Very grateful to have you here. And as I said before, Chief Keith, thank you for supporting this. And I might see Chief Sprague again before we conclude this trip, but very grateful that you guys would have the faith in me to support this and bring me out here. PK, you're the one that has been my point of contact and has facilitated this. And I started out with a car rental from SFO. And then slowly but surely, this not real bright kid from Denver, boy, I tell you what, Berkeley is a dense place, and it's not easy to find a parking spot there. So I'm thinking BART. The BART drops me off right in front of the place, and I'm in for an adventure. But when I'm away from home, you can't always carry the tools necessary, okay? And so he saved me from having to sit on some feces on the way over here and picked me up at the airport. I got to tell you, that made things just very, very, very painless coming over here. So thank you very much for that. Fire Nuggets Group is certainly supporting this and footing the bill for this. I would do it for free, but my wife does not agree with that business philosophy, okay? And most importantly, thank you all for being here again today. My wish and want, once again, my brother 81, is as we cruise through this, let me know why you're here, okay? And I'll ask the question from time to time. It's an open-ended question throughout the day. There are a wide range of firefighters in the room. I know that my brother James has been doing this. I couldn't pin him down entirely, but he gave me 15 plus years that he's been doing this as a firefighter here in the city of Berkeley. Now this thing there's some gremlins in this, and I think they're associated with static electricity. So when I go to this, don't do that, Dave. Stop doing that. Every time you do that, you lose that. As I said before, and for many of you that have been doing this for a fair amount of time, a lot of what I tell you today is going to be a review. Okay, it's no surprise to any firefighter in this room when I say you and I in Denver and in Fresno should have really good discipline when we're using elevators. Okay, there's not a situation where you and I should be taking an elevator directly to a floor of alarm or reported fire floor. But we know as human being firefighters across the fire service, we'll sometimes drift into some human complacency, and that might be done. It's certainly, I know it's done on my job, okay? And I'm ashamed to admit that, but I'm just being candid with you. Much of what I give you today is going to be a review for you. It's not, there it is.
It's a special one for you.
You are a good man, you know that? You're contributing he's contributing to the obesity of an old man. There's no doubt about that. Thank you, Bill, I appreciate that. So a lot of it's going to be a review for you, okay? Simple as that. I'm big on the reinforcement component. So when I get to know a firefighter from San Rafael, and I find out, brother, that you and I perhaps share the same philosophy with some sort of operating procedure associated with high-rise, that makes my train my plane ride back to Denver a whole lot easier, because I'm like, maybe I'm not so crazy, because there's a brother that I met from San Rafael who believes that this is an appropriate thing to do. Much might be reinforcement to help you out in terms of what you're doing is the right thing that you're doing, okay? And I know Fresno's no picnic. You guys got to be careful in Fresno. That's a place where you can get stabbed or rolled pretty easily as well, okay? So PK told me on the way out here, don't leave anything in the car. And when we did the trip from Seattle down to San Diego, Chief, you'll be proud of me, I hope. We parked our satchels, my wife, my daughter, and my satchel, and I ran a bike lock through them and then locked them in the car. Said they can get them if they want them bad enough, but they're not going to smash and grab really easily. All right, so we were kind of a little bit enlightened by that. Much of what we talk about will be a reinforcement. When I'm cruising along the line and I say, my brother in Santa Rosa, this is something I would recommend that you do, okay? I'll use the word recommend. Many years ago in Denver, Colorado, probably 2 decades ago, there was a retired fire officer from the Northwest that came into Denver, and he was given us a training class. And this is a guy that certainly has experience. He had a good pedigree. He was certainly into and engaged in the job, and he was trying to do the right thing. But his delivery of his philosophy at that training class in Denver, Colorado was very caustic. And he was pushing 2 things. One of them was transitional attack, as it was called at the time, and the other one was positive pressure attack. And the way that he delivered the information, most of the Denver firefighters in that training program shut him off about 17 minutes into it. And for the course of the next 20 years, do you think we did transitional attack or positive pressure attack? Not saying that there aren't places where those are appropriate, but we absolutely didn't do that. I'll give you some recommendations today. I'm going to try and make sure that I state this as a recommendation. Here's how I want to support this recommendation I'm giving you with regard to whatever it happens to be, and I'll say that. Last but not least, and most important, is, Chief, for you and I to be able to have some discussion, okay? Don't hesitate to ask any questions or throw out your 2 cents worth, or a sidebar with me at the break, or a conversation via email later on. Please be a part of the class. Be a part of the class. Would love to have you do that. So again, our tentative schedule, I've got a timer set for about 10:05. And if I'm cruising along at 10:05 and you have a TV brick and you can just throw it right at my face and say, it's time to take a break, let me know. We'll take that lunch break. We'll come back. I've got a half or a 10-minute break set up for the afternoon. And then, of course, as they say, there's no stupid questions in this class. All right, there's only stupid answers. So I'm the only one to blame here. No stupid questions until about 4:31, okay? At 4:31, they start to get kind of absurd, for sure. But that's why we're in this small fire service, and we can maintain the connection together. So I learned this morning that Alfonso's son is a United States Marine, and that's something I'll take with me. And I am very proud of you and your wife as parents, and very, very proud and grateful to him for protecting our freedoms. My assumption is that there's men and women in the room that have served, and I don't know if you'd be willing to let me know if you are one of those men or women that have served. Have you served? Anyone? Nobody's going to say so? Okay. We do have a service member there. What branch? Thank you very much for your service. Can you tell me your first name? Chris, thanks for being here. Thank you for your service. I don't take it lightly. One of the best things about this training room is, and I haven't read this, PK, but somebody built this, and it was a firefighter that built this with their hands. It's absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful with that red fire stripe in the middle, but most importantly, to me, it represents our freedom and the fact that I can get on a plane and travel to SFO and get a ride to the city of Berkeley and facilitate a training class. And it's crisp. It's because what you and many others like you have done, because the bravest thing you do, either on the fire department or within the armed forces, is when you raise your right hand and swear to that oath. So thank you very much for that. All right. So I always like to throw this out here and see, this is my crew back in Denver. Okay. And I'm the guy in front there. Um, I find that most firefighters are not willing to admit, James, that yes, I watched Chicago Fire. I watched the show Chicago Fire. Uh, the NBC series, for those of you that won't admit it or those of you that truly aren't familiar with it, there's a whole bunch of them. Obviously, Backdraft, Ladder 49, on and on. For me, The Towering Inferno was a classic. There's no doubt about that. I like to watch them all. This one, I watched the first time, and yes, it was as silly as it could be, and sometimes kind of a typical turnoff for a lot of firefighters. Oh my God, are you kidding me? This is what they're doing. But I found that a lot of people in my life were talking about it, Seth. I'd go to Kroger to pick up groceries, and the lady that's checking me out, this lovely lady, Teresa, she'd say, "Did you see Chicago Fire last night?" So I became re-engaged in it because I wanted to find out what was going on. So now when I go through the line and Teresa says to me, "Did you see Chicago Fire last night?" I absolutely did. Is it really like that? Every shift. Every shift. I was blown out of a window last night. I was trapped underwater. There was a pregnant woman. I had to do a C-section on her. I delivered triplets, and each child was named Dave 1, Dave 2, and Dave 3. Okay? Everybody's smoking hot. And we have co-ed dormitories. Chief, what could possibly go wrong? All right? What could go wrong with that? Now, I've met some Chicago firefighters, Seth, and they don't look like this. All right? Simple as that. But all right? A little bit about where I come from, because if you're like me, if I'm a firefighter sitting in an audience at a training class, what I want to know is who's this Joe my ass in the front of the room, and what the hell does he know about anything? Okay? I'm a student of firefighting. Oops, thank you, Joe, thank you. I'm going to stand a little bit further away from it there. Who's this guy? What the hell does he know about anything? I'm a student of firefighting that has always been grateful that I was able to, because of divine intervention, get on this job to begin with and follow in my father's footsteps. But if there's one thing I know for sure, I've had successes, I've had failures, I've been involved in tragedies, I've been involved in victories. But ultimately, to this day, I'm learning something new about what we do. A little bit about where I come from. Denver's a 155 square mile city. If you've flown into the Denver airport before, it's a big place and a big operation out there. Our airport is 53 of the 155 square miles. So the airport is a third of the square miles of Denver. It's a big operation. Metro population in Denver, about 3.5 million. We respond to about 150,000 calls annually. And I didn't know this statistic up until a couple of years ago, but I was even blown away by it. In Denver, there are 13,000 plus standpipe equipped buildings. And one of the questions I'll be asking you later, thinking about those standpipe equipped buildings in Fresno, and then narrowing it down a little bit further and thinking about the individual hose valve outlets in a building. So the hotel I'm staying in right now, the Marriott Residence on Center Street in downtown Berkeley. Cap, I think I had asked you yesterday when we talked a little bit about this, how many individual hose valve outlets in that building? And you were in a 3-digit figure, maybe 100 plus, maybe 150 or whatever. But think about each of those. What are they going to do? Do we know what they're going to do ahead of time? Or is it usually we find out in the heat of battle, which is the case? But 13,000 standpipe equipped buildings, some of those standpipe systems dating back to the 1800s, 600 plus high-rise buildings. And likely you're using the same definition in Fresno, California that I am in Denver, Colorado regarding a high-rise, and that would be a building that is 75 foot or greater above lowest fire department access. But with that said, when we were cruising around the city of Berkeley yesterday, okay, right across from Station 2 in Berkeley is a building that might not be categorized as a high-rise because it's probably below 75 feet. But there are absolutely places on the 360 perimeter of that building where you're not going to be able to put a tiller ladder truck. And absolutely places where you're not going to be able to reach with a 35-foot extension ladder. So, Joe, for all practical purposes, across from Station 2, albeit not classified as a high-rise, absolutely is a high-rise based on access, for sure. All right? 600 plus high-rise buildings in Denver. A little bit about the DFD in my corner of the fire service. We have 1,150 members on the DFD, 40 stations, 34 engine companies, 17 truck companies. There's 2 heavy rescue companies, a hazmat company. We haven't found anybody that wants to work on the hazmat company yet, but we're looking, okay? We call them districts. I much prefer your term of battalion chief. Okay, I like the military terms, Chris, but we call them districts, and I work as an assistant chief. That's based on our civil service ranking system in District 3 in the Operations Division on the Denver Fire Department. We have a shift commander, and then at that airport that I talked about, there's 5 DFD stations at the airport. Aircraft rescue, firefighting, and structural resources out there. It's a big operation. It's a separate division and district within the Denver Fire Department, but it's our people that are out there. Not my cup of tea, okay? There's cats that like to work out there, and they primarily like to work out there because it's a bottomless pit of money and overtime, but not exactly what I would want to do. So, yeah. The chief of the department gets pretty mad when he finds out an engineer at Den is making about 75 grand more than him for the year, and maybe I should go back to doing that. So as we cruise through this, I show you a map of my city primarily because I want you to understand that in the light blue there, the 5, the 36, the 37, and the 38, those are not the city of Denver. 5 is the city of Glendale, 36 is the city of Sheridan, 37 and 38 are the city of Inglewood. Stuff that I would never have imagined was going to happen, Chris, for me as a firefighter on the Denver Fire Department has happened. And that is the consolidation of resources of various agencies. Engine 5 was a disbanded company within the Denver Fire Department in the 70s. Today, Engine 5 is the company that serves the city of Glendale. It's roughly a 1 square mile city that previously had 6 firefighters on duty. And now when they go to a high-rise fire, rather than going there with 6 guys, they're going there with 43 guys, okay? They're stronger, and we're stronger because of that. The same with the Inglewood and the Sheridan. Off the map, and I don't have it for you, but I can tell you South Metro Fire Rescue in the Denver metro area, they have like a fleet of PIOs, and they video everything, okay? And they are tremendous at marketing their operation. We're not allowed, it's against the rules on our job to video anything. So we're not able to capture a lot of what we do. But South Metro is a 29 station department that touches Denver on the south side. It is the product of multiple fire districts and cities that have merged together. Now I say this because I believe my brother, first name, once again, Doug from Santa Rosa. Nobody has ever done this better, and I'm talking about collaboration of resources, than the state of California. I jokingly say this, but you guys know it's darn near true as well. Because you fellas and ladies try to burn your state down once a year, it's an annual event, you have become very, very good at collaborating with one another. So when I jokingly talk about this strike team that has driven in here from Fresno, okay, you guys know that exists. There's times in Fresno where a company leaves as part of a strike team going to whatever the operation is happening to be at the time. Usually a wildland or urban interface event. I sat in a class one time where a guy named Mike Bryant from LA County did the training class. And he was the incident commander at a California state wildland event that included like 1,000 engine companies. And at the end of that class, pretty much halfway through the class, I felt so junior varsity. I was like, oh my God, you know, I'm an incident commander? Are you kidding me? Not even hardly. Our ability to collaborate in that area, and keeping in mind that the history of the incident command system started in the state of California as Firescope back in the 70s, and it has evolved. Your ability to collaborate with one another and work well with one another across this very large state, please translate that and keep in mind that component, Chris, for the high-rise operation as well. So my friends here in Berkeley, Captain PK has told me roughly 37 on duty. And as you and I have had light conversations about this throughout the week, that second alarm in Berkeley for that high-rise event pretty much exhausts the resources. So Seth, certainly Oakland resources start coming into the city. Certainly Alameda County resources that start coming into the city. I say it jokingly, and I know that it's probably absurd to even talk about it, but the closer we can get to becoming tighter and together, the better off we're going to be with this. And for you, my brother up in Santa Rosa, Doug, who's coming in to help you guys out for that fire? And I know that's a big picture strategic thing. That's at the chief level. That's something they've got to be figuring out. But nobody's in a better position to do that than the California Fire Service because you've been doing it for a number of years. Just keep that in mind for your high-rise operation because it's absolutely critical. That engine 6, that's your company, right? They've been busting their tails the last couple of days. It's been a good thing to see, for sure. The stuff that I share with you today, I get it really from 4 principal places. One of them is from my father, and I mentioned my father worked from 55 to 97. Still a principal mentor of mine. He's 91 years old, still very engaged in the job. He has a dummy radio from our line shop. It does not transmit, thank goodness, because there'd be a lot of second alarms becoming third alarms if it did transmit. But he's listening to what we're doing. He's still into the job, and that's a lot of what caused me to be into the job. So some of what I share with my brothers from Fresno today, the seeds that were planted of that started with my father. Certainly my own experience, I've been blessed to work in a busy city, on busy companies and in busy districts, and I've had the opportunity to go to high-rise fires and standpipe-equipped buildings. My study, research, and engagement in our profession. Let's see here, somebody had the book out. Where the book kind of came from was this. I went to a high-rise fire in 1991, and you don't know what you don't know. And then I just remember at that fire where fear was starting to creep into my mind. Okay, it was on the 7th floor of a 20-story residential high-rise building. It involved a 750 square foot condo. I was on the nozzle of a 2.5-inch attack line. I was at the door, and we were not making an appreciable impact on that fire. Picture the times that you've stayed in a embassy suites with the atrium. 3131 East Alameda in Denver was a building with an atrium. And when Chief Miller gave us our assignment to get a backup line in place on the fire floor, when we walked into the building, there's this wide open atrium. And as I look up, I see this forceful blue flame, Joe, just blown out into the atrium. My experience at the time, and I had 9 years on the job, I started to think, is there like a natural gas thing going on up there? Or what is the story up there? I didn't realize at the time, because at the time, what you and I hear a lot about today, flow path, wind impact, wind-driven high-rise fire, that's something we hear a lot about today, and we understand it better today than we ever have before. It was a wind-impacted fire. I just didn't understand that's what it was. But after you make those number of turns and the smoke humbles us and there's zero visibility, we were not having an appreciable impact. And at that time, the company that I was on, Rescue One, was in Hour air cylinders. I don't recommend Hour air cylinders for you. Okay, I definitely don't recommend them full-time because they're very, very bad for L1 through 5, okay? Not a good situation. But we're in there and we're operating for a while, and something that I'm not supposed to admit in front of my colleagues, but there was some human fear creeping into my mind. I'm like, geez, this isn't getting any better. I'm a long way from being okay because I'm used to, as you and I both are, working at single-family dwelling fires where if you and I are doing a search, in the back of our mind, if something goes south right now, I've got a window about 5 feet back. I can blow through that window, and maybe the worst case scenario is I have a sprained ankle. You know what I'm saying? And as I'm deep into that building, the fear is creeping up. SCBA, don't fail me now. It required 1, 2, 3, 4 hose lines. 3 of them were 2.5 to stop that fire. And I wouldn't have believed it. And like we do after a fire, you and I would go in and trace our path where we did our search and that sort of thing. And in post control, we went in there and we're looking around and there's most everything's annihilated. And I said to my boss, who was an acting lieutenant that day, I said, what room do you think we're in? And he said, I think it would be the kitchen because I'm seeing the rough plumbing with the missing sheetrock and so forth, and some domestic water that's flowing. And when I looked over in one space in that room that we believed was the kitchen, there was a molten silver square, like a molten silver square on the ground. And I said, Joe, what do you think this is? Joe Cipri was his name, Joe. What do you think this is? He said, I think that was the refrigerator. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it for myself. And I wouldn't have believed that in a residential building, it took three 2.5-inch attack lines to stop that fire because it was a fierce wind-driven fire. And the only way we were able to do it was when Joe Cypri suggested, hey, that third hand line's got to go into 704, and we need to breach the wall because that's the only way we're going to get water on the principal components of this fire in order to simmer it down so we can push in and do the search. All right? A little bit of fear started to creep in there. For me, after that, geez, there's a whole lot about high-rise firefighting that I have no idea about. How do I deal with that? At the time, there was a book from John O'Hagan, was a 70s vintage high-rise book, and that was the only one that existed in the fire service. And I'm like, well, what other information is out there? I reached out to Chief Vincent Dunn from New York City, and over the course of time, I said, Chief, are you planning on writing a book? You're the expert in this. Certainly I am not. He said, I'm not planning on doing a book about that. I said, would I be stepping on your toes or anybody else's if I started the process of doing that? He said, absolutely not, and I'll help you any way I can. That was the kind of the ignition point for me to start that book. And a great deal of research associated with that book helped me, and a lot of that information today is what I'll be passing on to you. Last but not least, everywhere I go, when I meet great firefighters across our great fire service, I get a tidbit or a nugget from Doug, a firefighter from Santa Rosa. What's your rank over there? Are you a firefighter? Okay, a firefighter from Santa Rosa. And I'm like, here's something that Doug said they're doing in Santa Rosa, and it's a good thing. It's happened to me on this very trip, because when Captain PK, Jonathan PK, tells me, says, you know what, the way we are striping our hose packs in Berkeley is the middle stripe to identify it, but he's also has a stripe on the get out of the building side of the hose line. And I'm like, man, that's another fantastic idea. I'll show you the Denver hose pack and how to build that, and it's called the Denver hose pack, but really the appropriate name for that pack would be the American Fire Service Dream Team hose pack, okay? And the reason I say that is because when we first built the first version of that in 1992, it has evolved tremendously over the course of time, and much of the information associated with the quote unquote Denver hose pack came from outside of the Denver Fire Department from other firefighters. What you're doing today by being here and getting out from your four walls, okay, collaborating with other firefighters, that's the stuff that makes firefighters really great in our fire service. The ones that get out and find out what's going on somewhere else, all right? So firefighting operations and high-rise and standpipe equipped buildings, we'll do a little bit of a Reader's Digest version of that today, all right? When I look across the street from the Berkeley Fire Department Training Center and near Berkeley Fire Department Station 6, when I look across the street, I absolutely see many 1,200 square foot single family dwellings in this neighborhood. And Doug, you have these in Santa Rosa for sure. And first name, my brother?
Joe.
Joe, another Joe. And you probably told me that once before, because I got a Joe, there's another Joe. Where's my other Joe at? Okay, I got double Joe, yeah. Okay? Double Joe going on here. In Fresno, does this house exist in Fresno, California? Yeah, okay, yeah. And nobody loves Fresno like the firefighters that are there, baby, that's for sure, all right? 1,200 square foot building. Within this 1,200 square foot building on North Thompson Court in Denver, Colorado, Lieutenant Rich Montoya lost his life at that fire. And the analogy that we might sometimes say is, geez, a baby could drown in a bathtub. It's a relatively small building at 1,200 square foot, but that's where Lieutenant Rich Montoya lost his life. Rich was 60 years old. He was a 31-year veteran of the Denver Fire Department. He was within our fire department pension drop, and he had 15 work shifts before he separated from the fire department. He has relatives and sons and son-in-laws on the job. Tremendous tragedy, but a small building, all right? Many of you, dare I say, most of you, Chris, have probably done the Denver drill, Seth. And maybe the Denver drill is set up currently at the Oakland Fire Department training facility. I know it's set up here in this parking lot because PK showed it to me and told me about it the first day I was here. That building lower left is a 5,000 square foot building. That was the building where engineer Mark Langvart lost his life on September 28th, 1992. And over the course of time, that's where this so-called Denver drill comes from. But Joe, what I want you to know is that that's a 5,000 square foot building. And certainly bad things can happen in there, but for all practical purposes, not a really huge building. A dangerous building, nevertheless, because both the Bravo and the Delta sides of that building had solid masonry block walls. And on the Alpha and the Charlie side, all of the windows and doors were covered by security grates because of the neighborhood that building existed in. That was the last domino that fell for Mark Langvart, was that security grate and the inability to get out and running out of air. Obviously today, your city or my city, there's proactive work going on to eliminate some of those things. The best RIT team in the world is the RIT team that does a bunch of proactive stuff that tremendously lowers their probability of being deployed later on. It could be you and I throwing a 35. It could be you and I taking a security grate off a window. What I want you to think about, though, is 1,200 square feet. And I want you to think about 5,000 square feet. That was the position where Mark ended up. This is not Mark. It's a reenactment photograph of a firefighter of similar size to Mark. But that's the very room and the dimensions when you firefighters are doing the Denver drill. That's where it all came from, in that particular room, in that particular building. What I want you to think about once again is that square footage and that size. And if I was to show you this building at 1801 California Street in Denver, Colorado, that building is a 2 million square foot building. It's very complicated because the architects and the artists of our world do a lot of things that don't make things easier for us. And one of them in this building is it changes its shape, it changes its floor plan, makes it a little bit difficult for us. We can't always say this one's going to be like the next one, whatever the case may be, but 2 million square foot. If a veteran fire officer can get into a bad position and lose his life in a 1,200 square foot house, could you and I have challenges, Doug, in a 2 million square foot high-rise building? And that's the reason we're talking about it. That's the reason we're gathered here today. And once again, I thank you for being here today so that we can discuss it and talk a little bit about how do we tackle this particular problem. If I look at a risk frequency matrix, I think that every firefighter in the room would agree that high-rise event for all of us, for you in Santa Rosa, for me in Denver, for Joe in Fresno, for Seth in Oakland, that high-rise operation is going to be a low-frequency but very high-risk event, all right? The very best firefighters that I know, that I have the privilege to work with in Denver, and there's some very good ones there. There are also some employees that I would like you to never meet, okay? But the firefighters that I know, the best firefighters on my fire department, geez, I put them up against anybody anywhere. They're very good. What makes them really good, Doug, though, is they follow a process. And I call it that daily process. For all of us, Joe, for you in Fresno, for me in Denver, for Doug in Santa Rosa, we're all kind of cruising down this river that is our career. And most of the time, it's kind of smooth sailing, and you and I are going to some automatic alarms that don't turn out to be something significant. And occasionally you and I get called and there's multiple calls coming in and the CAD screen is lighting up, and we get there, and after we simmer down from that first alarm assignment, somebody had a barbecue on a balcony that was lit off. We do a lot of that. Rarely will you and I find a firefighter across the kitchen table in the morning that says, I hope we get a good GI bleed today. I could really go for that, okay? We're going to get a GI bleed today. That's as simple as that. On the Denver Fire Department today, as we speak, because of the homeless issue that exists in Denver right now, people in our city have identified that if I call the police, they're not coming, period, okay? But if I call 911 and say, I think this guy laying on my front entranceway to my business, I think he's dead. How do you know he's dead? I've checked him for a pulse. He's pulseless and he's blue. They know that in about 2.5 minutes, there's going to be a fire truck there and an ambulance sometime thereafter. And probably the most common communication, Joe, on a Denver Fire Department radio today or any day from now till the unknown ending period is, Dispatch from Engine 24, cancel police and EMS. This party was just sleeping. They're walking away. The Denver Fire Department is a very efficient but very expensive alarm clock in the city and county of Denver. That's what we do a lot of. I would like to say to you, every shift I'm working, man, it's like Chicago fire. I get blown out of a window, but I survive. And there's these hot people that I work with that and we have showers together, and it's really cool. Okay. Obviously, that's not what it's like. I cruise along and respond to a whole bunch of stuff just like you do that turns out to be something less than a significant emergency. As human beings, especially related to the high-rise building, especially related to the automatic alarms that occur in high-rise buildings, we can start to, as human beings, drift into complacency. And that's the biggest thing we have to fight. The great firefighters I know, we sometimes ask the questions of ourselves. First name? Eric, we sometimes ask questions of ourselves, okay? Do I have what it takes? Now I take a look at Eric, and I think Eric has what it takes. And I look at Eric and I say, I hope Eric's coming after me if I was down in a fire building. Eric looks like a strong man that's going to be able to do this job very effectively. Do I have what it takes? How do I know, Eric, that I have what it takes? When I'm evaluating firefighters on my job, Chris, how do I evaluate firefighters on my job to say, does Scott Eccles really have what it takes, PK? He absolutely does. And how do I know? Because of how he does stuff on a daily basis. When he goes to 333 West Bay out on an automatic alarm in a frequent fire building, again today, but he's fully suited up, he's got a set of irons, he's got a tech, he gets in that elevator, Seth, and he uses good discipline as he's cruising up to what he knows as a human being and an experienced firefighter is likely going to be another chunk of nonsense. He went through the process. Cappy went through the process. And by that firefighter going through the process, that's the guy that I identify and I say, he has what it takes because he's going through the process. And every man and woman in this room knows of employees in your organization that don't go through the process. And sometimes they're the cool cats, okay? I'm not buckling my waist strap because it's cool. And I'm kind of opened up here and my hood isn't in place because I'm not going to need, this is no big deal. This is nothing. I'm salty. Take a lick, okay? I'm salty. I'm as salty could be. But those are the people that are shitting their pants when they come around the corner and there's fire blowing out of a window. It's like, oh my God, it's fire. As the late Andy Frederick said, is the guy from Solid Waste Management really surprised when he brings the Kenworth into the alley and there's trash? Oh my God, trash, who'd have thunk it? All right? Is the librarian surprised by books? Okay? Is a police officer surprised when he encounters an asshole? No, absolutely not. They're prepared for that. If you look closely at this excellent patch on the side of the Caps shirt here, for all of us, it's true. Joe, for you, it's true, okay? Fresno, it says fire. I know you go to EMS calls, and I know you're very good at that. I know that, God forbid, we do some hazmat stuff, okay? And when I said the hazmat thing, you guys were kind of nudging one another, so one of you guys might be a hazmat guy. What is it? From the Joe Friday movie, pseudohalogenic compound cyanogen, okay? If I can't spell it and I can't pronounce it, it's a bad thing. Our middle name is Fire. Berkeley Fire Department. The Berkeley Fire Department, and Chief Keith will tell you this, the Berkeley Fire Department provides excellent customer service and provides a wide range of customer service items. And a lot of people would say our most frequent one is EMS. Okay, fine. If you want to say that, that's fine. Our middle name is Fire. And the late Chief Alan Bernasini used to talk about the hypothetical Mrs. Smith. And if we went down this street right here, and I'm representing the Berkeley Fire Department today, and this is these two captains are with me. Mrs. Smith, what do you want us to be able to do? Mrs. Smith, most of the time, you're from the fire department, right? Yes. Well, if I have a fire, I'd like you to put it out. Okay. It's a pretty simple thing. That's our middle name, and although this is a low frequency event, it's a very high risk event. Eric and Doug and Chris, our ability to perform there is based on what you're doing on a daily basis. And my assumption is, by looking at you, is you're a man that's spending some time associated with physical fitness and cardiovascular endurance. Okay? Am I wrong about that? You know him, right? Okay, yeah. And that's what we have to have. That's what we have to have. Went to an Andy Fredericks Memorial Golf Tournament up in Angels Camp many years ago. And Chief Mike Vesseling did the keynote address there that year. And here's one of the things he said. He said to all of us firefighters in the audience, Chris, he said, if you were trapped in a fire building, would you want you coming after you to rescue you? I'll bet Eric would want him coming after him, because I damn sure want Eric coming after me and several of your colleagues here. But I also want to emulate whatever it is you're doing to stay in top physical condition. Now, I can tell you at 60 years old, it gets a little bit tougher, but I am below my 25 BMI. And I've made it a point to stay below that 25 BMI. And I've made it a point to continue to do the things that are necessary to stay in the best physical condition I can stay in. Now, I'm not going to choose you for a wrestling match, not today or ever, okay? I'm not going to do that, all right? Is that our wrestler right there? Well, he's got some beef on his arms too. Look at that right there. That's the spinach you're eating, right, brother?
He's World Wrestling Federation.
Nice. Does he have the ears? Those, you see those guys in the bar that have the ears that are a little bit beat up, and it's like, can I buy you a beer before you kick my ass? Or would my buying you a beer prevent you from kicking my ass? Stay in top physical condition. So I want to turn it back out to you guys, Cap. Cap, first name? Ryan? Okay. Brian, I want Ryan with an R. Sirenaires. My apologies. Sirenaires, okay? Before the end of the day, you're going to be Joe. One of the two Joes. In fact, this Joe has had it with me, and he's decided to haul ass anyhow. We arrive on scene, and we see fire blowing out those windows just like that, okay? What's going through your mind? What are some of the things you're starting to think? And once again, I especially for you Bay Area firefighters, if I was to, and I don't like to talk about dark stuff much, but as a firefighter, just like you, we see things that are pretty ugly and pretty nasty over the course of time. I still cannot believe, James, that the events of 9/11 actually took place in 2001. I'm like, I still can't believe that happened. Did that really happen? Is that a bad dream? When I think about that from a realistic standpoint, I certainly land on the Bay Area, and specifically the city of San Francisco. If there's a second big ticket target in our country, that's one of them. And so when you look at this building and that fire that's showing from 4 windows of this commercial high-rise building, if that doesn't exist in your first-in response area in Santa Rosa, California, remember you're part of the California Fire Service system. You could absolutely be at that. Now, Seth, the lake that's in downtown Oakland, what's that again? Lake Merritt, okay. Obviously, a significant number of high-rise buildings around there, including the modern tenement where they take up a city block and they have a 400-foot-long hallway with standpipe connections every 400 feet. They're really doing us some favors there. You could, more than anybody else, be across the bridge and helping them out. When the one building that's tipping over slowly eventually tips over, or whatever the case may be. I was watching local news this morning because I'm always interested to watch local news and get the flavor of what's going on locally. And they were doing some earthquake stuff. And these poor women reporters, they're like, it looked naughty is what it looked like, okay? And it was like, geez, do they have any idea how this looks as they're being filmed right here? But they were in an earthquake simulator. And there's discussion, as you guys know, and because of the fault line, you're sitting on a very vulnerable place. So the bottom line is you could find yourself somewhere other than first due within the California fire system at a real big deal event. So keep that in mind as you're kind of cruising through and looking at these here. Maybe a little bit of debris is starting to fall. Maybe it's a little bit of a simpler one here. Now, I'm not going to pin anybody down on this, but tell me your first name, my brother. Jordan? If you and I were to ask a younger firefighter, okay, let's say that Captain PK's got an academy class here, and let's say he's got some younger firefighters, both chronologically and time on the job, I should say. When we ask a younger firefighter the question, where would you like a fire in a 20-story building? Would you like it on the 20th floor? Would you like it on the 10th floor, or would you like it in the lobby? What is the answer that you and I typically get from that younger firefighter? And the intuitive answer that they would give us. The same answer that Mrs. Smith down the street would give us. What's the answer they usually give us? They want it in the lobby. Because, geez, it's right there. You could get it with a 200. It's right there, for goodness sake. When I asked that question, Ryan, when I asked that question of veteran firefighters, a veteran fire captain, okay, across the room, when I asked that question, what's the answer that I get typically, Doug, when I ask that question? 20th floor, 10th floor lobby. What's the answer that I typically get from somebody that's got time on the job and experience? I usually get the 20th floor, right? And although intuitively that doesn't make sense to you, and geez, the fire's right here, I can get to it right here. What we know is this fire in the photo that I showed before you right there, Jordan, that's a gift. That is a gift right there. Because the higher we can put a fire in a high-rise building, although it sounds very counterintuitive, the better off we're going to be. Do you think the people below this fire are more inclined or less inclined to follow our direction and instructions post 9/11? More inclined or less inclined post 9/11 to follow our instructions? Specifically, stay where you're at. Hey, Dave McGrail, I'm a paid professional firefighter, okay? I remember almost 2 decades ago, I went to Disney World in Orlando, Florida. Something I would recommend you never do in your life if you have a chance to do that. The alarm went off in the hotel in the middle of the night. My kids were very little at the time. One over each shoulder, and I told my wife, grab my ass and hang on, okay? We're getting out of the building. I'm not even following their instructions. Post 9/11, people are very reluctant to follow our systems officer instruction. May I have your attention, please? The Chief McGrail of the Denver Fire Department. There's a fire in your building, but you can stay right where you're at if you're on floors 1 through 10. What the hell did he just say? I'm getting out of here. Because I remember in 9/11, they told people to go back, and a lot of those people lost their lives because they didn't know there was another missile coming. People are reluctant to follow our instructions. But even though they're reluctant to follow our instructions, and even though as we're cruising up, Jordan, they're cruising down with a microwave and a bird cage, okay? And they're taking a whole bunch of the stair territory for us as we're climbing up. The higher we can put a fire in a building, the better off we're going to be from an exposure standpoint. Eric, from a logistical standpoint, you and I still have to get from point A to point B, and we have to take our stuff with us. And there's a demand there. There's no doubt about that, which is why you and I are staying in top physical condition. But from an exposure standpoint, the higher we can put a fire in a high-rise building, the better off we're going to be. Now, you will find as we cruise through the day here that if I do something wrong, or if you do something wrong, or things that I see that take place that are wrong in my own mind, I'm going to blame it on pot. I blame everything on pot. Okay? I would say that if I had a blood test right now, you're going to find pot in my system. Because I was at the Jupiter last night having a pie with some friends. And I'm telling you what, it was banking down in the Jupiter. And I'm saying, I'm starting to take a little bit of a feed here. And would you, my kind brother, direct me back to the location of my hotel? Because I'm starting to feel a little wispy, okay? There's no doubt about that. I blame everything on pot. This is a high-rise building that's been smoking pot, and it got a little bit tired and decided to lay on its side. It's a wide-rise building. And Joe, you have these wide-rise buildings in Fresno, California, all right? You have these buildings. You give me a fire on the 50th floor of a high-rise fire every day and every night, and I'm happy to take it long before I want to have a fire in a wide-rise. Because the fire in the wide-rise, the minute we walk into the doors of the wide-rise, we're on the fire floor. And it's a complicated, difficult thing. This fire occurred in the city of Aurora, Colorado. A very good fire department, Chris. I worked for them for 5 years before I was lucky enough to get on Denver. It's a busy city. They get shootings and stabbings and fires, about a 17-station department. This building, at the time of the fire that they had in this building, would have been categorized as a fully sprinklered building, Seth. Fully sprinklered building, all right? What do you think the first hose line was And it didn't look like this when they got there. Right? It didn't look like this when they got there, but what was the first hose line that was stretched into this building? 1.75 inches, because that's our workhorse weapon. That's what we do most of our work with. That is our successful weapon for what we do most of the time. Now, when you look closely with this fire department right here, there are great men at the leadership level and at the rank and file middle management level and at the firefighter level, James, who are facilitating a change on the Berkeley Fire Department to go from the 1.75 inch tube to a 2.25 inch tube to enhance their ability to effectively operate at high-rise operations. How well do you think that change is going to be accepted by everybody in the organization? Keeping in mind, and Chris, you're giggling a little bit here because you and I both know that in the fire service, our firefighter colleagues that we love and we work with, they hate two things. And the other? The way it is. Simple as that. So, but what's going on here is a huge thing. And so part of that recommendation for my strike team brothers from Fresno, Joe, is as you go back, I'm not sure what's going on in Fresno, but try to help facilitate some of those positive changes. And I will try and arm you with some information today to where you might be able to talk to the most pessimistic, most negative guy on the Fresno Fire Department and say, here's some of the reasons why we need to consider to do this. And sometimes you open up some eyes. You're already talking to him? I don't see that. He's got a great smile and he looks like a positive guy. All right? But it's a difficult thing sometimes, but it's important for us to do that. This was a fully sprinklered building. My biggest message to you today, and you look familiar to me. Have I worked with you before? Tell me your first name. Lauren, thank you for being here. All right? Seth, I know you've heard some of my nonsense before, and I'm very grateful that you would come over and suffer through another one today. You know, and Lauren, you're going to know, and Joe, you're going to know at the end of the day. My big message to you today is what we have up here as firefighters. What we have up here, Eric, in terms of preparation. And item number one is for each of us, Ryan, as firefighters, to believe that it's going to happen. Okay? Eventually it is. I wish I had a crystal ball. If I had a crystal ball, we could look at it and I could say, we can relax today. Today's going to be nonsense. All right? We really don't have to go full steam ahead today. But you know what? We have a shift coming up, okay? It's our October 24th shift. We're going to have a dandy little worker that day. Let's make sure that we have 4501 in our air cylinder. Not enough to explode, but pretty close, okay? Let's make sure that's fully topped off. Let's make sure we're doing everything correctly. Let's make sure the hose bed is properly put together. We don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you when it's going to happen. You can have a significant fire in a fully sprinklered building, okay? I guess it would be South Bay. If I'm geographically speaking correctly, it would be San Jose, right? Many of you probably, either by local news or if you were looking at fire porn on the internet, saw the fully sprinklered Home Depot in San Jose as it generated so much energy that there were buildings lighting off in a separate zip code, okay? That was allegedly a fully sprinklered building. Now, I know you can look deep into that, and there's issues associated strategically and tactically as to shutting off, turning on the sprinkler system itself. But there is an example. An example for you would be the Walmart Distribution Center, Joe, in Plainfield Fire Territory, which is in Indianapolis Metro. Fully sprinklered building. And now, of course, Walmart is suing the 31 fire departments that responded there. I'd like to wring Walmart's neck and say, if you build a building that we really have a very difficult time extinguishing a fire in, then you get what you have coming to you. My daughter went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and there's a Highway 36 that's a diagonal that goes from Denver out to Boulder. And I always looked with great interest as I'm cruising out to see my daughter, and I go through the city of Superior, and I look over and I see what's left of the Element Hotel in the city of Superior. There's a concrete elevator hoistway left there. That was a fully sprinklered building. And about 2 years ago, coming up in December, was the most destructive fire, Chris, in the history of the state of Colorado. And it was a varsity California fire for sure. Hurricane force winds, tremendous amount of energy bearing down on the Element Hotel, albeit a fully sprinklered building, it was incinerated. Please believe that you and I are going to something significant today. If we believe that, then we start to prepare for it. And then when it happens, and it will, when we come around the corner, we're not screaming like children. We're like, okay, this time we're not only doing the stretch, but water's going to come through the bale this time, and we're going to have to do a search. And we're in a great position to do it. All right? These things absolutely happen. What's going through your mind, Ryan, as a captain with your organization, and I believe it's San Rafael, right? As a captain from your organization, when you come around the corner and you see one of these four, chew on that for a second. Seth, what's going through your mind as a fire officer in the city of Oakland? Where are you working right now, by the way? Okay, all right. What's going through your mind when you come around the corner? Okay. Joe, what's going through your mind in Fresno, California, when you come around the corner and see this? Eric, what's going through your mind? What are some of the issues? What are some of the issues? All the way back to you, Ryan. What are some of the issues? These are going through your mind. Boy, I've got a long list of things here. And what are some of those things on that list? Resources. Boy, that's a huge one right there, and I'm really glad you started there. Really glad you started there, because that's a reinforcement for Dave McGrail. Geez, Ryan from San Rafael said resources. And what I will say, and this will be a repeat for you, because it's like a broken record for you, unfortunately, now, but we always start out with firefighters, and I say, Doug, okay, Santa Rosa, okay, the single most important thing that a fire officer in this room can do when they come around the corner and see this is to call for help. Whatever that form is for you. It could be a second alarm in Berkeley, a second alarm in Denver, perhaps a second alarm in Fresno, and then other resources. What are the other resources that you trust and you can depend on that might be coming in to help you within Fresno? Thinking about that. Resources, thank you for that. What's going through your mind? What's going through your mind when you come around the corner and you see one of these?
On top of resources, I'm thinking about water supply.
Water supply.
Exposures.
Water supply and exposures, huge. What's going through your mind? Absolutely. You know, a lot of people in that building. Captain or lieutenant right now? Captain, okay. On the truck or the engine down there? Oh, that's outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. And really great to see you again. The life safety component, tied into time of day, tied into type of occupancy. What's going through your mind? What's going through your mind here when we see these? Anything? Yeah. I mean, Ryan's talked about resources and calling for help, okay? Eric has talked about the water supply and some of those issues, exposures, big ticket item, okay? Seth's talking about, geez, what about the people? How many people are in this building and how are we going to deal with that? What's going through your mind?
Getting a line in service.
Getting a line in service. And you know what? That's perfect. That's perfect that you would say this. Over the course of time, as I look at fire departments and watch fire departments across our fire service, here's one of the things that I see. Fire Department XYZ, Doug, has been cruising along doing their thing. Going in and out of buildings on alarms, burnt food, maybe a sprinkler controlled fire, that sort of thing. Everything seems to be fine. And then, Joe, they get a decent fire. And they get a decent fire, and unbeknownst to them, everything that they had in place was not quite as it should be. And they say, okay, hold the phone. We're going to convene a high-rise committee, okay? And with that high-rise committee, we're going to come up with something new. And from now on, when we get a high-rise fire, when engine one gets there, you guys are lobby control. Okay, here's a vest. Here's a vest. You're probably a 44 long. Here's a vest. You can be lobby control, all right? And I'm checking a box. And from now on, when engine two gets there, Doug, engine two is going to be in charge of the elevators. You're going to get the elevators for us. I love elevators, okay? And then from now on, Seth, when truck one gets there, truck one's going to be in charge of the building systems. I find there's a lot of fire department, James, who build this significant command and control network where we're checking boxes and we're passing out vests and we are building something to support the firefight. And the single most important thing we can do is exactly what Joe said. Get a line in service. I did a training class in Danville, Virginia. It's a very small organization. They have an area where they're starting to build high-rise buildings in a hotel casino area. And with about 6 firefighters on duty, they asked me the question, how do we put out a high-rise fire with 6 firefighters? And my answers are always twofold. Item number 1, when you find out, let me know, because I want to know the answer to that as well. But my more candid and more direct answer with them is, brothers in Danville, Virginia, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I would tell Joe from Fresno, the same thing I would tell PK from Berkeley, the same thing that I would tell Seth from Oakland. Get a line in service and try to stop the fire. Preferably a powerful hand line in the 2 1/4, 2 1/2, perhaps 2-inch range. A powerful hand line where you have 2 engine companies that have paired together to operate as one fire attack team so that you can move it and do what you have to do with it. Getting that line in service to try and stop the fire and getting a search done and then building from there. If you and I have enough resources, regardless of where we would happen to be, Chris, in the American Fire Service, to get a powerful line in service to try and stop the fire and to get a search and then build from there. Now, every man and woman in this room knows there's a whole long list of things that we're going to have to do before this is all said and done. But if we can focus on that before we start worrying about the blood type of the firefighter and the Charlie position on engine 1, wait a minute, hold the phone. Where's your passport? Oh, shoot, I just brought my driver's license. Do I need my passport? You know what I'm saying? Guys will ask me, so what's the best accountability system in the fire service? I think they're looking for an infrastructure answer from me. And I'm like, it doesn't involve Velcro. It involves the incident command system. It involves mentally and physically prepared firefighters, and it involves us doing some of the fundamentals. You're going to have us put a line in service. Ryan got us some help started. Okay, Eric's talking about the water and the exposure is a big ticket problem, and Seth is talking about the life safety component, life hazard inside that building. That's really good stuff for us. I find that many firefighters in our fire service will oftentimes say, you know, I can understand why Berkeley's going to a bigger tube, the 2 1/4. Like if they had a fire in a big commercial building, I could understand that. But you know what? I mean, it's a residential building, for goodness sake. Can't we use 1 3/4 for the residential building? That's what I use for ground-based operations. I think we sometimes can underestimate the power of a residential occupancy fire. I take you to Marco Polo Apartments in Honolulu, Hawaii. There's a distant photo. Look at the close-up photo. Tell me what your feeling is as experienced firefighters about the energy here. The energy that, and remember, this is an outside photo. I'm talking about the energy as you and I are making our way down the hallway and trying to make a turn into an apartment that's well involved. You can see that dark black, Jordan, that dark black petroleum-based smoke. I always ask the question, and I would ask it of somebody from my generation, but maybe I could do it with you, James. And I know that you're not exactly from my generation. How many TVs did you have in your house when you were growing up as a young man? One. All right. Would that be true for you, my brother? Tell me your first name.
Seth.
Seth? You can't be Seth.
I know.
That's far too confusing for me. Seth, thank you for being here. What department are you with? Alameda County. And you told me that once before, and now it's there. And hopefully it won't leave. All right. Thank you for being there. And we talked about TJ Welch. I'm back to normal now. Okay. You had maybe one TV growing up in your house as well? Was it a Zenith? It was like, took 2 men and a boy to get it from one room to another? Okay. I'm going to say something to you right now. Picture tube. Picture tube. You know what I'm saying? Think about this. Who do we know in the room? Who can you throw under the bus for me? It might be one of the men that you're with. Somebody might be able to help me out. Who do we know in the room that is a father, is a husband, maybe a wife, maybe has children, maybe a lot of children? Who, would that be you, my brother? How many kids do you have?
I have 2.
Have 2. How many iPods, tripods, computer monitors? 0. Okay, you're not helping me here, all right? You're not helping me here. For most people, okay, for most people, what do we have in our houses compared to generations ago? Generations ago where there was one TV. Would it be reasonable in most houses there's going to be mini computer terminals, maybe iPads or whatever the latest and greatest term is. And they're all built from principally plastic components. The late Andy Fredericks, and if you don't know who that was, and you probably do know who that was, okay? Study him, take a look at that Andy's, the books of, the works of Andy, that sort of thing. He would describe what each of us are sitting on in this room as comfortable gasoline, okay, comfortable gasoline. Jordan, here's an experiment I did one time. My daughter Caroline was a Barbie gal. She liked Barbies growing up. She Barbie, 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 Barbie. Then one day, like the switch flipped, and the Barbies were done, and she was moving on with something else. But she had 2 Teresas, and I'm a reasonable human being. I thought, how many Teresas does one person need? All right, if she's got 2 Teresas, I can absolutely, Seth, take one of those 2 Teresas. Caroline's not going to miss that one Teresa, and I took that Teresa to the firehouse and lit her on fire. Okay? Now, the reason I did that is because I wanted to see just how powerful Teresa is. Teresa'd kill all of us. Okay? Light a Barbie on fire sometime and look at the dark, black, nasty, petroleum-based smoke that comes out of that and how it starts banking down into an average room. I got done killing Teresa. I got back home, and my daughter, first thing she said to me, not good morning, Pop, how you doing? Whatever. Have you seen Teresa? And you think that you can, Jordan, you have kids? Okay. Daughters? You're with me on this. You think you can go to Walmart and buy another Teresa. That's not the Teresa that she had, and she knows it, okay? Teresa killed a bunch of us, so she's a wicked woman for sure, all right? Think about that, though. What would you say, based on your experience, is the GPM need to stop this fire? And you can study Marco Polo fire significantly. It's an out-of-the-box fire. It's no longer a compartmentalized fire. It starts in an apartment. It extends. It gets into that public hallway. By way of auto exposure, it makes its way to the upper floors. It's a multiple floor fire eventually. But based on what you see right here, what do you think the GPM requirement's going to be? And I don't have an exact answer for you. I just know that based on our experience, if we ask every individual firefighter in this room, every firefighter in this room knows that that's a fire where we're going to be taking a pretty good beating, and we're going to have to be prepared, and we're going to have some powerful tools and weapons for that particular fire. All right, a lot of energy there. All right, more than anything else, and as I get into this other segment this morning, and we're closing in on a break, and thank you very much for your respectful time and attention. I've got a timer that's going to go off in about 8 minutes, and so in about 13 minutes, we'll take a morning break, and we can use the restroom or get a beverage or have something chocolate or whatever you'd like. But we talk about this fire a lot, Seth, because in Oakland, California, and Denver, Colorado, this is the fire. This is the high-rise fire / standpipe operation that occurs most frequently. It's like our ground-based operations, usually going to be in a residential occupancy. If we're lucky, the door to the fire department or fire area has either an automatic closer on it, or it has been closed by the occupant that's leaving. It makes it a compartmentalized operation. This is not a bad deal here. The problem with this one is it comes with a built-in Charlie Division supervisor. And this Charlie Division supervisor, we need to wring his neck.
It's a fire!
And there he goes. Jackass number 1 has contributed negatively to our operation.
It's a fire!
All of these ants here are starting to, oh my God, the building's on fire.
The fire! Get out!
Oh, you jackass. All right. I want him to be a much better Charlie Division supervisor than he is. The reality, especially with this gift of a fire, Joe, as you know, because you've seen this now a couple of times, that fire is in a perfect spot for us. And the more people in that building that we can leave in place, shelter in place, whatever you want to call it, the better off we're going to be. But there's a whole bunch of them because of our buddy on Pennsylvania Street. For the fire building on Pearl Street, our buddy is agitating the hell out of a bunch of people. We needed a SWAT team to sniper his ass right out of the world, okay? Find out who's saying that and put a stop to it. We did a program for the London Fire Brigade in the UK last October. And we found out that in the United Kingdom is ultra firefighter safety centric. Okay? Take a look at a fire that occurred in a place called Grenfell Towers. Many civilian fatalities at that fire. Now, this is not meant to badmouth the United Kingdom Fire Service, but there's a reason we kicked their ass, okay, a long time ago. There's a reason for that. I would much rather be a firefighter in the United States associated with all of you. But over the course of time, we were doing this program, and when asked of those the leaders from the United Kingdom Fire Service, what do you say? What do you say? What do you say? Evacuate, 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 evacuate. And my colleague from the Denver Fire Department, Eric Tolan, that I was with, him and I are like, holy crap, that's a lot different thing. And then they come around the panel to us. How about you guys from Denver? What do you say? Don't evacuate. And everybody in the room's like, what the heck are they talking about? Eric says, we go to a number of fires in the city of Denver where some of the people in the building don't even know a fire occurred in the building. That's a great thing. They never left, and that we were never competing with them in a stairwell. This is a good example. Now, this fire at the lobby level, boy, things changed significantly. There's no doubt about that because of smoke propagation. But Jordan, as many of these people that we can leave in place that don't interfere with our operation, the better off we are. So when this guy who hasn't been to a fire recently, he's probably an accountant or something like that, and he's on his balcony, he starts screaming bloody murder, he's not helping us. He's not helping us at all. So as we cruise along here, once again, very grateful to the Berkeley Fire Department for hosting and for the Fire Nuggets folks for facilitating this and supporting this in a monetary fashion. You guys have made a trip down here today, okay, and it was a 3-hour drive. All of you are here for various reasons. I know your city touches this city, so not too much of a stretch for you to come here today, but you have a family, Seth, okay? And you have a wife, okay? Your wife has a list of things that you're supposed to be doing right now, okay? My wife, Gina, has a list of things I'm supposed to be doing right now. Dave, are you going to fix that towel rack sometime in 2023, or is that a 2024 thing? You know what I'm saying? There's things that you can be doing up in Santa Rosa right now, all right? Thank you for making a sacrifice and spending this day with me. For me, Chris, understanding why you chose to do that will help me as we cruise through this. Something I'd just like you, Ryan, to chew on during our first break. Why you chose to do this today, what's on your mind, what are some of the things you're hoping to get out of it, what are some of the questions maybe you have ahead of time. You can tell me in a sidebar, you can write it down on a piece of paper, you can say it in front of everybody else, but I really want this to be worth your time. And as we reconvene after our lunch break today, I'll ask the question. And because, Joe, you already threw, first name one more time? Trevor. You already threw Trevor on the bus, said he's kind of a negative guy and so forth. Perfect, okay? So I'm going to, I know, yeah, aren't we all, okay? So I will ask everybody, you know, who do you know that's a very pessimistic person that might not even be here? Would they be getting their money's worth and their time out of this? That's the thing. Just want it to be worth your time for sure. All right? So with that said, why don't we take a slightly earlier break, take 10, do what you have to do, have a cold beverage, have a treat, and we'll reconvene in about 10. All right?
Some of us have to work, but